In today's show, a media day wrap-up after the Blazers meet the media ahead of the 2023-24 season. We talk about what this team's going to look like and the biggest questions still facing them as they kick off the season. Welcome, Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard, Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you every single weekday, Monday through Friday. Make it a part of your daily routine. Tell your friends to do the same. Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, recap Media Day 2023 for the Portland Trail Blazers. Talk about who said what and the biggest questions remaining. There wasn't a lot of news that came out of this one. We're going to talk about the Blazers, what they want to do, what questions they still have to answer in terms of how they're going to do that, and then sort of the biggest nuts and bolts questions as we head into training camp, which starts in earnest on Tuesday, October 3rd in Santa Barbara, a week in Southern California for your Portland Trail Blazers. Wasn't a lot of news, though. It's not a newsy one. You know, it could have been a newsy one if a certain point guard had still been around, but the Blazers took care of that one with some trades they made. And frankly, you know, Joe Cronin spoke about it. He started off his press conference saying, you know, wanted to thank Damian Lillard for 11 great years and wish him the best. And he wasn't, and when asked about it, he said basically like he wishes some things had been different in the way it went down, but mostly he wanted to do what's best for the team, which is kind of what he'd been saying he would do in July. It's what we've echoed here. We don't need to relitigate it too much. If there's any news around the Dame stuff, it's that Cronin confirmed that there was a meeting with him and Damian Lillard, and indeed Dame was like, can I just come back to the team if you're not going to trade me to the Heat right now? But as Cronin says it, as speculated here and reported in The Athletic, it wasn't like Dame had rescinded his trade request. He was just saying, if you're not going to trade me to the Heat now, let me come back, be on the team, and eventually, let's figure it out and let me get the full Kevin Durant treatment and get traded where I want to go eventually. And Cronin said that he and quoting, like, I told him I didn't think that was a very good idea. We don't need to relitigate it more. You've lived through enough Dame drama. Joe Cronin prioritized the franchise. Damian Lillard ended up in a pretty good spot, albeit not the spot he wanted to be. The end. New era begins now. The biggest takeaway for me, I guess the other newsy stuff before we get into the big takeaways. Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams not with the team yet. They are going to fly into Santa Barbara, meet the team Tuesday in California to the start of training camp. They'll do their physicals then. Team's already announced the trade. It's going to go through, and Malcolm Brogdon for now is going to be part of the plan. Joe Cronin said he wants Brogdon to come in, be part of the plan, be part of this thing. He's going to be the oldest player on the roster, impart some of that veteran age 30 wisdom, and he will and they'll move forward from there. Obviously they can just because he's not going to trade Malcolm Brogdon this week doesn't mean he's not going to trade him soon. Should another opportunity arise, but it's not going to be a Drew Holiday thing where it's like boom, flipped, gone, never showed up. Brogdon will report, probably play some preseason games. It may be a handful, if not many regular season games before the Blazers make a decision on him. That's really the newsy stuff. The rest is mostly observations. I was in the room, and here's what I observed in the room. The number one thing everyone's talking about, most of the Blazers sort of, of the non-traded guys, DeAndre Ayton hasn't been on the court. Anthony Simon's confirmed. He showed up. Him and Twani Kamara haven't practiced yet. They showed up over the weekends and, saw the locker room and et cetera, but haven't gotten out on the court. Obviously, Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon haven't been out on the court. But of the guys that have been there, the roster guys that have been there, they've been playing pickup, 5-on-5 all of September, or most of September, basically since the Labor Day weekend passed. You can't. The only difference between the start of training camp and September is you cannot fine someone for being late. That is the only difference. It can certainly still be practice, and coaches can, help out a little bit and say, here's how we want to do things, blah, blah, blah. They just can't tell you need to be there and mandatory team activities fine for being late type of thing. So I don't want to say that they've been practicing, but they've been practicing. And a lot of that is just playing playing. New team needs to play together. And the number one takeaway from everybody is the pace they're playing at. They are just with Scoot Henderson as a lead guard. They are just playing breakneck speed. Super young team. They haven't even added in their really athletic centers with Ayton, who I think is going to be a darn good transition center after playing pretty slow in Phoenix, and Robert Williams, who he can move when his body's right, and he could be an interesting transition rim runner as well. But with the speed they have with Shaedon Sharpe and with Anthony Simons and with Scoot Henderson and with the young wings like Jabari Walker and Chris Murray, and they're getting up and down. Throw Kevin Knox in the mix too. Here's a newsy thing. Kevin Knox spoke at Media Day. Makes me think he's making the team. They brought him out at Media Day. He's got a non-guaranteed contract. Brought him out at Media Day to speak to reporters. I'm going to say Kevin Knox on the roster. Congratulations, Kevin Knox. Maybe not, but I will say that's a good tea leaves one for you. So everybody's talking about pace. Everybody. That's the number one thing. It's like, hey, what'd you notice? What have you noticed? What have you appreciated? What do you notice about Scoot? What have you noticed about playing with the new guys? What's kind of been like to play together in September? Every player. Pace, speed, particularly Scoot's, ability to get up and down in transition as the young John Wall that he is. And Joe Cronin mentioned that this team fits more of what Chauncey Billups wants to do because he would prefer to play with a little bit of pace. Scoot mentioned it, that they would like to play with so much pace that they don't really run set plays. They read and react. They push against the defense. The defense, everyone runs to kind of designated spots and then reads off the ball, so you're not walking it up and running a bunch of set plays. You can't always do that. If you don't get stops, it's hard to run when you're taking the ball out of the basket. But, if the Blazers look to push on every opportunity, it'll be a fun brand of basketball, an exciting version of basketball. Here's the thing. Every team says they want to play fast at Media Day. Every team wants to be more physical on defense. They want to be the best communicating team in the league, and they want to play faster, get out in transition, and get easy buckets. Every team says that. You know how I know this? The Blazers said this last year. You don't have to go that far back to find a team that professed a desire to play fast and play to their coach's preferred style and all of those things. And guess what? They didn't do that because they had Damian Lillard. And that's the big thing, is that players dictate so much of your style in this league. Coaches put their imprint on stuff for sure, in terms of how things look and how things get set up. But most of the league plays spread pick and roll type of basketball, except for the Warriors, basically. But most of it looks the same. A lot of the defensive principles across the league are the same. And so what dictates the difference in teams, there's some subtle stuff for sure across how everybody wants to do it. I don't think all the bread is baked in the same manner, but it certainly has similar ingredients. You're starting with a little water and flour. But the difference is who, not what. And the Blazers' who is very different this year. And with Anthony Simons, who can fly and could play in transition, with Shaedon Sharpe, who's an elite transition player, and with Scoot Henderson, which all of his teammates have said that he just really loves to play fast, to get downhill, play fast, and share the basketball. That's what basically to a man. That's what everybody said about Scoot. That's what they were excited about, because he loves to share the rock. He loves to play fast, get into the paint, and share the rock, and they're excited to play with him. Well, if you have the personnel that fits your coach's style, then the coach's preference can actually matter because you have the personnel to do it. And I would say there was a tradition maybe 10 years ago in the league that younger teams and maybe teams that were a little light on talent would play slower. I think that's gone away. I think over the last decade that's gone away. And teams, typically even young teams, will just play fast because they'll play a high variance style and et cetera, and getting out. And it's just easier to run and get points in transition than it is to be more meticulous, which was something that was probably more popular in the turn of the first decade of the 21st century. They're going to play fast. I believe it this time. I didn't believe it last year. Go listen to the tapes. I didn't believe it last year, but I believe it. That's going to be part of who they are. But the part of who they are remains the biggest question for me, or the biggest sort of overarching theme. Who the heck is this team? They are so stinking new. They are young. And even the veterans are many of the veterans brand new to the team. there's not exactly a lot of holdovers. This is a new era in so many ways. What I want to talk about in the second segment is forming that identity. Media day is mostly about, getting in front of the mic, asking some questions. Everybody shows their face and you kind of kick it off formally. You don't get to answer a lot of questions, but I do think, like you do, like literally you answer a lot of questions, but the actual game stuff is answered when the actual games play. But I do think it gives you a good sense of where folks are at. And where the Blazers are at is feeling the newness, because it's very, very new. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how deeply new this whole experience is. Damian Lillard was on the roster on Tuesday of last week to Wednesday morning. We are not exactly deep into the new era, but into the new era we've journeyed indeed. Let's talk about the identity of what this new era is going to look like in the second segment. First, I want to tell you about Ibotta. You're going to have to buy stuff. Why not get cash back when you're buying stuff? Doesn't that seem like a good plan? Get started today using Ibotta, which gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items from produce to personal care, pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Either link your loyalty account or just upload your receipts after you shop, get your cash back. It's super easy. The average Ibotta user earns $100 a year. So that could cover, a shopping trip. That could get you a chance to upgrade your seat on a flight you're taking if you're going on vacation over the winter holidays. It could get you tickets to a Blazer game. Get yourself some nice tickets, or take yourself out to a little fancy dinner with your Ibotta cashback. Other apps, they'll give you points, right? But those don't really amount to much. You cash in some points. You're getting a free side at dinner. You're not getting the whole dinner. But with Ibotta, you can get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, gift cards, however you want to do it. It's not just grocery. It's hundreds of online brands and retailers like Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. So download the Ibotta app right now. Use the code LOCKED to start earning real cash back. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use that code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKED. All right. The Blazers want to play a certain way. They have a style in mind. They're young. They're bigger than they've been for certainly at the center position, and even those big guys are more athletic, a significant athletic upgrade over what they had with Yusuf Nurkic in the past. They have a chance to play a style. But I think my big question here is, what is their identity? And I don't mean that in last year, the branding from Chauncey Billups was, we want to be the team that nobody wants to play against. And that just never came to fruition. And I think Chauncey Billups was pretty upfront with it in the media day today. He said, frankly, what we tried didn't work, talking about the Damian Lillard era. He's right. I thought that was a refreshingly honest take from a head coach who probably legitimately misses having someone as good as Damian Lillard in his huddle. Or will soon if it hasn't set in yet. They want to play a certain way. That's not the identity necessarily. Be the hardest team to play against. I don't think they're going to be an elite defensive team. Might be a little better on defense than they've been, but I'm willing to wager that they'll be bad still on that end of the floor, just based on their youth and personnel. They'll probably be a little worse on offense too, because they're missing Damian Lillard. But they want to play different. And different is beginning to establish a new identity. But I'm talking sort of beyond just X's and O's basketball stuff, right? They're going to look different because Damian Lillard isn't going to be pound, rescreen, take a 30-footer, get to the rim, finish on the left side with his right hands, be the best offense in the league all unto himself. That's gone. It will be, you can celebrate sort of a more egalitarian hoops, but it might be worse. It might be worse on offense, even if it's a little more aesthetically pleasing. I'm talking about beyond X's and O's. I'm talking about just, what is this team's sort of holistic, who the heck are they identity? Who is the unquestioned leader of this team, right? Who is the voice you go to in the locker room after a bad loss? I guess they pull him out and do press conferences now, but who's the guy who gets it when they get when they have a tough night, lose by 27 at home, and they got to bring someone out to the podium, who gets dragged out there, right? Like who's that guy? Anfernee Simons, certainly a candidate. Jeremy Grant, certainly a candidate. Anfernee Simons, the longest tenured Blazer by basically 4 seasons. The second longest tenured Blazer is Shaedon Sharpe, who signed his rookie contract with the Blazers on July 1st of last year. July 1st, 2022, second longest tenured Blazer. Followed by Jeremy Grant, who was officially traded to the Blazers on July 6th, and Jabari Walker, who signed his contract with the Blazers on July 13th. Everyone else is brand new. In addition to 4 players on the team last year who were in training camp, they've got 4 rookies and 2 sophomores with Sharpe and Walker, long-tenured sophomores at that. Matisse Thybulle was on the team last year after the trade deadline. He played 25 games in the city, but like this is a brand new team. And I think there is, like I said, there is a vacancy for leadership. Jeremy Grant's probably going to step into that role, but I don't think has that big, loud personality publicly to be that guy. Anfernee Simons, I would say, I thought it was a great interview today, and he's certainly matured a ton in terms of that, but I don't think he's that sort of natural, loud leader. But certainly they will be called on to do so. Malcolm Brogdon, the oldest player on the team at age 30, will be called on to provide some leadership. DeAndre Ayton and Robert Williams, they've played into the NBA Finals, both of them, even if they're just, Ayton's about to turn 26 and Williams is 26. It's like, these guys have real high-level NBA experience, but are either of them sort of wired the way to be that like leader, face of the franchise type of person? I don't know. Like I'm not going to sell any of these guys short. Like potentially, but that's part of the identity. Who assumes that role, both in the locker room behind the scenes stuff that we won't see and only hear about, and also just in the sort of face the music, talk to the media, have the hard conversations. Anybody can talk after a win. That is easy to do. Anyone can puff their chest out after a win. It's on tough nights who steps up to the microphone. In the past, in my time around the Blazers, that's been Wesley Matthews, who was absolutely the voice in the locker room, and Damian Lillard. Wes, long gone. Dame just left last week. There is a spot for someone who has to take that responsibility, who has to accept that and take that responsibility. I think Scoot Henderson has a bunch of leadership qualities. I also know that Scoot Henderson is 19 years old. It would be inappropriate for him to step into that role. What is their identity? I think that's a big question. A couple anecdotes on this. There was a question, very fair, like totally reasonable question from a reporter at Media Day, and they asked, Scoot, you've been not only asked to replace Damian Lillard as the point guard of the next era, but you're asked to be the new Damian Lillard. And as the reporter was saying the new Damian Lillard, Scoot just leaned in the mic and said, Scoot Henderson. He's not trying to be Damian Lillard. He's trying to be the first Scoot Henderson, the new Scoot Henderson. He's going to take his lumps along the way. Got certainly a rocky road ahead to figure out how he's going to be an NBA player, but I have said a million times in this podcast, or at least many, that I think he's going to be really good. But there are learning curves in the league, even for someone like Scoot who spent a couple years in the G League. And Chauncey Billups explained as much today when he said, like, there's going to be nights when he has to go through tough times, and my job as a coach is to let him be out there experiencing those tough times, because you got to grow from it. It's not to shelter him. It's to throw him into the deep end and let him figure out how to swim back. That's the challenge. And Scoot, I think, understands it and is capable of it and has that sort of personality to step into it, but not at 19. I think the word I'm leaning on here and haven't said yet, because I'm a lot of a dork. And maybe I have some new listeners who don't want to hear me say dorky stuff. But I think what the Blazers are, new listeners, I'm going to say some dorky stuff. Lock in. It's a long season. Love y'all. Old listeners, you know the game. But I think what the Blazers are missing in their locker room is a little bit of gravitas. Who's got that pull? Who's got that sort of felt but not spoken leadership? Gravitas. It's not a better word for it. When Carmelo Anthony was here, he had that. But it's because he was going to be a Hall of Famer. He was Carmelo freaking Anthony, and it felt like it. Command the locker room, command the respect, command people's attention. He was Carmelo freaking Anthony. The Blazers don't have that. Malcolm freaking Brogdon? I don't know. I don't know. I've like literally never met him. So we'll see. Like I am posing these questions as opposed to trying to answer them. Speaking of the leadership void and the identity, because I don't know, like I know what they want to do on the court, but the sort of all of the other stuff that goes into, the traveling band that is the 40 people on the plane for the Blazers and like the sort of who keeps things going. I think Scoot has that sort of, to steal a phrase from Nazir Little, he has the like sort of gasser mentality to be the hype man, right? Hey, keep going, let's go. But that is not the same thing as the sort of leadership of men in a professional basketball organization. It's not the same thing. Matisse Thybulle talked about this. A veteran entering his 5th year in the NBA season. Quite frankly, an elder statesman on this team. Jeremy Grant, 29, old as heck on the Trailblazers. Malcolm Brogdon, truly a grandfather at age 30. But Matisse Thybulle, entering year 5. He mentioned that one of the ways he saw himself helping this season was that he was going to be available for young players. And I like the way he phrased it. I freaking love Thybulle as an interview. Incredible. He's great. He's really, 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 really good. A great talker in the parlance of media folks. A great talker. Matisse Thybulle says like he's going to be available. And I asked him what does availability look like? And who was that for you when you were, coming up in the league? And he said that it was Tobias Harris. When he was with the Sixers, Tobias Harris was his vet. And what that meant was Tobias Harris was available for him to ask stupid questions. Because when you're a rookie, you think you have it figured out and you don't know what you don't know. And then sometimes it dawns on you that you don't know what you don't know, and you need to ask a stupid question. But asking the coach or asking, publicly and in the team setting is either uncomfortable or inappropriate. So you need someone who you can, as Matisse Thybulle explained, ask something stupid and something obvious that they can just explain. Here's how it works. Even if it's like how the hotels work on the road, stuff like that, right? Just like simple things that guys in the league take for granted because they've done it a bunch. And Thybulle said that that's part of what it was really helpful to him to have someone like Harris, who he could just say, hey, I don't know how this works. I don't know what we're supposed to do on this play. I don't know what this call is. Can you help me? Asking the questions that you might not be able to ask in a public setting. Being that. Perhaps the Blazers don't have that person who is the big, bold, I can take it from here type of personality yet. And perhaps they do it in some sort of committee way. Billups has talked in the past about how players really listen and respect to Jeremy Grant, but that is something that happens more behind the scenes than in front of us. I think the longest tenured Blazer at the ripe old age of 25, Anthony Simons will step into that role because he's going to be a good basketball player. It really helps if you play at a high level. It's hard to be a leader if you're not like Udonis Haslem, if you're not playing every day and playing pretty well. People need to listen to someone who can show you, right? Like I think that's what Brogdon's value is on the court, is like, okay, here's how you work a pick and roll. Watch me. I'm literally going to go do it on the other end. I'm going to navigate this pick and roll as Dorian Finney-Smith and Cameron Johnson try to guard me, and I'm going to get into the middle of the paint, and then I'm going to make a play, and that's how you do it. That's how you get a guy in your hip. That's how you manipulate the back line, all those things, right? Helps to play. I think Anthony Simons can step into that role. I think Malcolm Brogdon can step into that role. I think conceivably, I think Jeremy Grant can step into that role. Conceivably, it could be DeAndre Ayton, but I don't read his personality that way. But again, I don't know. And the story might be out by the time you listen to this, but Jason Quick was asking questions to kind of a couple folks that came up to the podium, like, who is the guy? Like, who is the face, right? Because the Blazers don't have that. The face left. Damian Lillard was the face of the franchise for a decade. The face left. Who is it? Who follows in his footsteps? And Chauncey Billups just said, we don't have that player right now. And one of the fun parts about going into media day, and I'm sure Quick will write about this more, it's in The Athletic, go read it, but like one of the fun parts about going to training camp from Chauncey Billups' view was that he didn't really have to make decisions on lineups and stuff like that, because he could just tell everyone, go get it, like go earn it. The opportunity is there, go earn it. Go earn the minutes on the ball, go earn the spot on the court, go earn the spot in the rotation, like go earn it, because we don't have a 5-time All-Star. They don't have a former All-Star. They don't have like someone who who is like clearly deserving of the, hey, you're going to get 25 shots and everyone else is going to get in where they fit it. They've got opportunity available. Certainly there's some spots in the rotation that seem to be very clearly spoken for, but this week, as they get ready for the beginning of preseason and into the regular season, but this week of training camp will really allow them to practice a couple times a day, and Chauncey Billups able to see who's ready, who, there's minutes and roles and rotation spots up for grabs. Go get it. Let's talk about what they can go get and the biggest questions facing this team as they enter training camp. Join me in that third segment, won't you? Still a pass, first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I think the sort of largest, most massive question facing this team, and I think Chauncey Billups faces it too, is what is their identity? The how you want to play is important. How you actually play and how it functions, how the boat indeed floats, is going to be what this team kind of searches out. They're so stinking new, and everybody repeated it. But there's some small granular questions too, beyond the sort of overarching feel of like, wow, this whole thing is so new, which I think everyone really felt. The rookies, no idea to know that it's new because everything feels new. But the vets, Ant and Jeremy Grant and Thibault, like really seem to feel like, whew, this is new. And for DeAndre Ayton, it's literally new, like literally has been here a few days. But there's some granular questions that I think are facing this team as they head into training camp. They won't get answered in training camp. I'm going to frame these as training camp questions. These are preseason questions, right? They will be answered when they play competitive games. They'll be answered behind the scenes. The coaching staff will get a sense, but truly be answered for us, the viewing public, once they start to play the game. So these are my biggest questions that I have for this team. First is the two bigs. In his tweet, perhaps poorly worded by Adrian Wojnarowski, he said that the Blazers felt that they could use Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton together. It's Twitter. It's like you have a character limit. You're trying to just get it out succinctly, and you're also racing against other newsbreakers for that sweet, sweet feeling of breaking the biggest story. So some of it is confusing language. What I do not think, and to be fair, Billups and Cronin didn't commit to the idea yet. We don't know what we're going to do. We'll figure it out. But I don't think Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton are going to start together. They certainly could, but if I had to guess, they will not. My guess is that the starting lineup is the lineup I've been guessing. It's add DeAndre Ayton in the middle. But like Scoot Henderson's your starting point guard, Anthony Simons, Matisse Thybulle, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton. I think the bench is pretty clearly Malcolm Brogdon, Shaedon Sharpe, Robert Williams, and then a question mark. We'll talk about that question mark in a moment. But even if they don't start together, they might be weird, but they might. Can Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton share the floor together? From this seat, I don't think that's a particularly good fit. Even if DeAndre Ayton has good shooting touch, he has got good mid-range touch, and he's stretched out to the three, not with any regularity, but you've seen him shoot threes if you've ever watched him on occasion. But parking him in the corner and keeping him out of the paint to not be a rebounder or asking him to crash from the paint, it just doesn't seem like a way to use him in the modern NBA. Perhaps this team thinks they can run, and they can mitigate some of their weird half-court spacing by not playing in the half-court that much, but you can't run on, I don't know, even if you run a lot, you can't run on 65% of your possessions, 60% of your possessions. You have to play the half-court some. It's how the sport works. I don't think they're going to play together to begin the games. First of all, that guarantees basically that they have to play 12 minutes each game together, six to start, because that's basically when the first subs naturally happen in an NBA game. So like 6 minutes to open each half. That might be too many, but I think the question isn't whether they start together. I don't think they will, but it's can they play together, period. Because if they can, and the Blazers can play some gigantic lineups, big helps on defense, even if it's weird. Big helps. It might be weird on offense, but big helps. And if they can function together, the Blazers have something very interesting cooking. They don't need to do this. They don't need to. They can play something like 30 minutes for Ayton, 18 for Robert Williams, and then they play together just a little bit to bump Robert Williams up towards, 24, 25, half the game, right? Totally normal. Totally reasonable. And if they need to close with both on the floor or one on the floor, they have options to do it. But how those two fit together is a big question, because, long term is maybe a little getting out over our skis here on this particular podcast, but there are some, if they are guys who truly can't play together, it does diminish some of the value of Robert Williams, who I think is really stinking good. But if they can play together, boy, does it open up some interesting defensive looks for the Blazers, because both those guys are big and can move their feet on defense. And that starts to feel pretty intriguing. Odd, but pretty darn intriguing for me, because I love weird basketball. The next big question is a guard rotation. Like I said, I think Scoot and Ant are your starting guards. I think they've been very clear they want to play Shaedon Sharpe at the 2. I think he'll get some minutes at the 3, but they view him as a shooting guard. And if they want Malcolm Brogdon to be part of the plan, he's going to play at least some. He was the 6th man of the year last year. He's probably comfortable coming off the bench. Would say that the Boston Celtics of last season were a little bit different of a situation than the Portland Trailblazers of the 23-24 season, just a tad different in terms of their goals and overall talent level up and down the roster. But Brogdon certainly is like comfortable in that role. If he plays off the bench, it's easier to limit his minutes to some extent, because you can just bring him out early and bring the starters back. But he still needs to play some. You can't just the trick of he comes off the bench doesn't naturally make him A, comfortable playing 18 minutes a night, and B, it easy just to play him 18 minutes a night. The rotation matters. There's only 96 guard minutes to go around between the 4 guys. If Scoot and Sharpe are only playing 28 minutes a game, it's not a crime, particularly early in the season. But at some point, you want him to bump up in that 32, 33 range and let him play. Let him play. That's the point of this team, is to let the youngsters play. I will be curious how that shakes out, how much they play 3-guard looks. They've talked about, several people, including Chauncey Billups, talks about Scoot Henderson has some defensive chops. 19 guarding point guards in the NBA is really hard. It's a lot of ball screens to navigate. It's a lot of really high-level players coming at you with the ball in their hands. It's a lot of on-ball defensive challenges. I think Scoot Henderson might end up being a darn good defender in the league, but that's a tough ask. And if you continue with the guard looks, who does Anthony Simons guard? Who does Malcolm Brogdon guard? What does it look like when you do that? It'll be curious. I think Shaedon Sharpe can play small forward. I just wouldn't want him to be locked into only getting minutes at small forward. I think that would be a disservice to his skill set. So how the guard rotation shakes out is curious to me. See how long Malcolm Brogdon is on the team. This might not be a question that we ask for very long, but very well, certainly there's a chance that Brogdon is on the team for months, not days. And if it's months, you got to figure out how the minutes work, because Brogdon is Cronin said it himself. He wants him to come in and be part of the plan. He's going to play when he's on the roster. They're not going to, they're not just going to DNP CD him to play the youngsters. He's going to get opportunity. And the last question is, who's the 9th guy? I mentioned who I think the 8 are, and I think the 8 is kind of unassailable pick. I think a lot of people, I've heard people with passionate beliefs that are maybe different from mine about who should start, and I respect all of your passionate beliefs, most of yours. Some of y'all, get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. But I think personally, this dude, Scoot, Ant, Matisse, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton. Then off the bench, Brogdon, Robert Williams, Shaedon Sharpe. That top 8 in some order. The 9th person is a question. I think right now it's leader in the clubhouse to be the 9th guy. Chauncey Billups has mostly played 9. He's occasionally played 10, but mostly played 9. I think it's a better number anyways in terms of getting guys real minutes. Is Jabari Walker. He seems to be clearly the choice for 9. I know that there's a section of the fan base that thinks he's more 5 than 3. I would lean that he's we all agree he's a power forward, but some think he's 4-5. I would say he's more 3-4. It's about who you can guard in the NBA. I think he's much more likely to guard 3s than 5s functionally, but I understand he rebounds, so he has some center qualities. And the Blazers have 2 good centers. They don't need They don't need a weird, tiny little center. That's from the past. That's last season, y'all. I think Walker has a chance to be is the leader in the pack right now to be the 9th guy. Obviously, things change. Toumani Camara could be. We'll see. He was pretty darn good for the Suns in summer league. I think Chris Murray could. I would assume he starts behind Walker in the pecking order just because of NBA experience, but he could. Like if he can shoot and he can and defend a little bit and rebound a little bit, like he might have more offensive stuff than Walker, and that might make him more appealing. But those are the question marks. And for me, those are the guys that if any three of them, Toumani Camara, Jabari Walker, or Chris Murray, if any of those guys is like legitimately good as an NBA player this season, then the Blazers, like, it's not like they're like, oh, they're the 4th best team in the West. I don't think that. Like, I don't think that's their ceiling. I just think they're just so young. It's hard to win in the league when you're young, and the Blazers are very young and inexperienced. But like, that takes them to a team that's going to have some nights each week where they just get stomped to like a tough out every night. If any of those dudes are like legitimately good NBA players, a tough out every night, because then you have like a pretty viable 9-man rotation, even with Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe like being super, super young, right? Like you have, you're not going to, I don't think you're like a high level playoff team, but you're at least a really competitive team every time you take the floor. Right now, I think the Blazers just depth is an issue for them. Just like straight up depth is an issue for them, particularly at the forward spots. But this team's going to be fun. I came away from media day with more answers or more questions than I have answers, but I do feel strongly, and I said this last week, and I feel it even more after talking with the sort of main figures on the team, is like, I'm talking with as a press conference, listening to and asking a handful of questions of the main figures on the team, is like, I think this team's gonna be fun. Competitive? I don't know, but fun, easy to root for and fun and enjoyable and a fun, they're going to try to play fast as heck. And, they're going to put the ball in Scoot Henderson's hands a lot and Anthony Simon's hands a lot. And I think they're going to be darn enjoyable. Those are my big questions. Those are my thoughts from Media Day. Come back for tomorrow's show. Brendan Clean of Locked On Suns is going to stop by, and we're going to talk about what DeAndre Ayton will bring to the team with the Blazers' big new addition who spoke to media today for the first time. We'll continue to cover training camp and everything that happens. That's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.